It's nearly time for you to all get to the bar. I promise. It won't be long. So, you could say that I was a failure from the moment that I was born, if not before. I was born the third of 4 children. Have we got any other middle children in the audience? Right? You get me. You get what goes on there, right? And I was an unplanned pregnancy, so a bit of a fail. I was also born a month early, and I was supposed to be born a boy. My parents already had the names Daniel and Alexander picked out, ready to go. So when I arrived, such as I did at the end of September, way early, they were stuck for inspiration on what to call me. So they looked no further than a bottle of Avon perfume and the weather outside the window. The bottle of perfume was actually spelt with 1 N, and my name has 2. And yes, Storm as the middle name. So they were nothing if not unimaginative. It's a shame, really, as I could have passed for a boy quite easily. My hair took a while to come in. Obviously now it's, beautiful. But yeah, the hair took a while. So first failure. I use this picture, and you're going to see this picture a lot, because when I fail, I take it really personally. I take it really, really to heart. And to me, it literally often feels like the end of the world, hence the picture. So growing up, things didn't really get much better. I did very well academically, and perhaps because of that, I had no friends at school, kind of didn't really fit in. I was bullied at home, at school, kind of all over the shop, really. There was something, although nobody knew what it was, that marked me out as being different. And the problem I also had was having no clue what I wanted to do with my career. One minute I'd want to be a teacher, then I might want to be an archaeologist or a paleontologist, whatever was on TV that week. Because I didn't love one thing more than anything else, nothing ever really felt quite right for what I should maybe do with my life moving forward. So then there's another failure. People always say to you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I literally had no idea. So I left sixth form at 17, much to the irritation of my head of sixth form, a lovely French woman called Mrs. Roberts, who assured me that anything I did with my life would be a waste of my abilities, because in France, you stay in higher education until sometime in your 30s, so dropping out in my teens wasn't really going to be the done thing. So what I did instead was spend some time doing maths and languages in the time that I spent there, but again, didn't really feel that like something I wanted to spend my life doing. Unlike Guinea, who you saw earlier, who loved science and knew that she wanted that to be her life, I just had no idea. So instead, I decided to run away and marry a bloke I met on the internet. 15 years later, it's gone okay. He's sat over there. But in 2002, this wasn't the done thing, and it brought quite the shame and scandal to my family. I am known as that one of the 4 girls who ran off to marry a bloke she met online. So, there's that notoriety. Failure again. I wound up in the valleys of Wales. Anybody know the valleys of Wales? Like 2 people, Mountain Ash. So we wound up in Mountain Ash near Aberdare, and couldn't find work no matter how hard I tried. And so I enrolled in the local college to study childcare, as childcare and social care were the only real industries in that part of the country. And I picked up maths again at the local college on the side in the evenings. But I then realised, and those of you who know me will find this no surprise, that I am the least maternal person in the world, and I don't want to have any kids of my own, never mind look after anybody else's. So naturally, I dropped out. Failure again. So bounced from job to job for a little while until I wound up working at Thomas Cook in their head office. I got a job there working in procurement. Shout out to anybody working in procurement. Do we have anyone? No, good, because it's really dull. I did not enjoy it. I learned some good things in that job, though. I learned to use Excel, which is well established as a really important skill for what I do now. I also did some quite scary things, like jump out of a plane. I learned what that was like. But the scariest thing by far that happened to me was discovering what happens when you hit reply instead of forward on an email when you're complaining about someone and you send it to that person. Fail. That was an awkward conversation. Needless to say, I'm always checking the reply alls and CCs ever since. So it was while I was here that I got my first job in digital, so 12 years ago, and it's what I've been doing since. My role in procurement meant I had to chase a lot of invoices, because at Thomas Cook we didn't pay an invoice unless it had a purchase order. And we had all these invoices for massive amounts of money to companies that were managing search spend, so all this money that was going to Google. And so I got to know the guy who ran this department really well. And one day he said to me, oh, you like spreadsheets and you're good with numbers and stuff. You should apply for this job, this search thing that we're bringing in-house. So I asked him to explain to me what it was that I'd be doing. And any of you who work in search will get this. What he described to me was SEO, not paid search. Definitely not the same thing. However, got the job, carried on with that. My life is now spreadsheets. Although now, oddly, I live my life in PowerPoint, which I think is actually less fun. But that's what I do day to day. So you may have gathered by now that I'm a bit stubborn. Don't tend to listen much to advice from people. And less than a year later, when there was a merger with My Travel on the horizon and potential redundancies, I wanted to leave before I got pushed, as I'd only been at the company for 2 years, and I knew that my role would be one of the roles at risk. And so I took a job working in London for a small travel-focused agency, a first way of kind of exploring that world in the big smoke and spending some time getting to know what life would be like in London, commuting down from Peterborough every day. Season ticket cost a fortune. Did someone just woo for Peterborough? Well done, okay. I mean, we've been here for 8 years. I guess you've been here for a while, right? It can't be that great because we're not there anymore. So, usurious season ticket costs, which absolutely ate up the salary that I was making, but I learned a lot. There was a lot of potential if I could make a life in the big smoke work. I even got tapped up by Google for a while, wanting me to come and work in their travel team, until they asked that question that they used to ask about what degree I had, and they realised I didn't have one, and then they were no longer interested. It's fine, I don't think I would have fit in well there anyway, she says. Free food would have been great though. So nonetheless, I worked in London for 3 years for a couple of different agencies until I just couldn't do the journey anymore. It was at least 4 hours every day, absolutely soul-destroying, and it just sucked the life out of me, as well as being insanely expensive. But I love my job, so we wanted to figure out what to do next, and so we looked at other places that we could move to where I could get a job in digital. And we narrowed it down to 3 places: Edinburgh, Manchester, or Leeds. We'd never been to any of these cities at this point. We ruled out Edinburgh instantly for just being too far away. And it's a shame, actually, because now I've been to Edinburgh and I really, really like it. So it was Leeds and Manchester, and we picked Leeds, really, for just the fact that it was closer to the Dales and maybe easier to get back to Peterborough, right, when you want to go. And so without ever having visited Leeds, we were like, right, let's move, let's start looking for jobs. So we just kind of did it. 8 years later, we're still here. But my time here, career-wise, has been really, really mixed. You'll know, anyone who works in Leeds, that it's a bit like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but more like 2 degrees in Leeds, because everybody knows each other in the north. You can't go more than like 10 paces before bumping into someone who knows the someone, and gossip gets around, and career-wise, it's really easy to establish a reputation about yourself without kind of trying that hard. So I have ended up with such a reputation. Someone who tolerates no nonsense, can be direct, sometimes a little too direct. And I've had some jobs that have been great and some that have ended really badly. By badly, being asked to leave the building. It happens, it happens. So I would describe myself as kind of Marmite to employers. Some love me, some hate me. Since realising I have an intolerance to yeast, I can't eat Marmite anymore. This makes me really, really sad. Marmite and butter on crumpets is one of the greatest things, and I really miss it. I've even had some employers when I was looking for work say that they would never, ever, 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 ever hire me. Even if I was the only person left to fill that job and they really needed someone, they would not do it. So, you kind of class that as a fail, right? People don't like you, it's not very nice. So around this time, I began to doubt the personal philosophy that I had for myself, which, like some of the other ladies here tonight, was about being bold and taking risks, and that it is better to kind of do the thing and learn from it if it didn't work out than it is to wonder what if. What if I'd done it? What could have happened? I'd had so many bad things happen by that point, and I'd made so many mistakes, taking jobs that I shouldn't have taken based on promises that didn't materialize, leaving behind jobs that I'd really enjoyed, that I just didn't feel like I could trust my gut and my intuition anymore. So around this same time, I also learned that I'm autistic, high-functioning Asperger's to be specific. And all of a sudden it explained the last nearly 30 years of my life. the social awkwardness, the lack of friends, there being something, although no one quite knew what it was, marking me out as different. Really interesting, but now I knew what it was. That felt like a bit of a failure. It's a bit of a failure to suddenly wake up one day and realize that the way your brain is wired essentially feels a bit defective. It's not, it's just different, but you do have to go through that process of essentially rewiring your brain and figuring out how you fit into society and adapt moving forward. So while it's been a challenge, and I feel it's been something quite difficult to deal with, I've also tried to do better since then at owning my differences. The wiring that gives me the same problems that I have with social interaction and making kind of small talk with all of you after this and being in big rooms like this, which is just like hell, but you practice and you get better at it, also gives me a skill with numbers and patterns and an ability to kind of pick things up quickly and makes me quite good at what I do. But now I know what those things are, I can better try and manage them. I've also become more determined to bring my whole self to work, partially because it's too tiring emotionally and mentally not to. I think there's so much that we could do if we all did more of this. What I've also been trying to do is not shy away from being direct with people or pushing forward on projects that I really care about and trying to take a stand for things that I think are important. If I am so direct that I offend someone, I'll apologize. That's gone hand in hand with kind of being upfront with people about the fact that I might offend them without really meaning to. But generally, people know I don't mean it maliciously. We all get on quite well, and generally it's fine. And there's been a lot of research recently and a lot of stuff published in the press showing that diverse teams do better. And there's been growing awareness and improvement, although nowhere near as much as it needs to be, around gender, age, race, LGBTQ, and more. But I also want to encourage everybody in this room to think in terms of neurodiverse and neurotypical, because those of us who are autistic, dyslexic, have ADD or ADHD, we are wired differently and we literally experience the world in a different way. And that perspective, if harnessed and channeled properly, can only be of value to businesses. So back to all my failures. I think there were 7 or 8. I lose count. What I want to leave you with tonight is the idea of reframing things. And this ties in with something that Kimberly said in the first talk. And if you think about it, our industry actually prides itself on failure. It needs failure because failure helps you learn. I have learned so much from all of the failures that I've had that I don't really consider them to be failures because they've all taught me something. I would only suggest to you that something is a failure if it happens and you learn nothing from it. Talk about Edison. So we've just had an Edison quote, but here's another one for you. When he was creating the light bulb, he said, "I haven't failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." So that's one way of thinking about it, about reframing it. Facebook's philosophy for a long time was move fast and break things. Now it's the slightly less catchy, move fast with stable infra, which is great. But ultimately it means the same thing, that you should try new things, and if it doesn't work out, then you move on, and you just pick up the next thing. We should encourage failure, we should expect it, because it's how we learn. And if you won't listen to me, maybe you listen to this guy. The greatest teacher failure is. Because it's true. If you don't know what you want to do when you're at school, or when you leave school, or when you leave uni, it doesn't matter. If you try a career and it doesn't work out like it didn't for Guinea, it doesn't matter, because you'll have learned something from that process, and you'll be all the stronger for it. So what I want you to do is reframe those failures, reframe the things that people say to you. I've heard a great phrase that you should never ascribe to malice what can be attributed to ignorance. This, by nature, is really difficult for me because I'm naturally predisposed to kind of think the worst of people. It's not a very nice way to live, to be honest with you, so I'm trying to do it a bit better and be more positive in my outlook. But what this lets me do is I can look at the things that people have said and not instantly assume the worst. I can look at it as less of a failure of me as a person and maybe try and think more about what might have been going on with the other person at the time. So this is a quote from my sister, direct quote. One of many beautiful things she said to me. This probably isn't off the back of anything I said or did. Chances are it was her own insecurities and her own fears that led her to say this. And also, when you become an adult, I also think she was probably jealous of the fact I have boobs and she's completely flat-chested. But, whole other conversation. I had a boss who said this to me, that I was too young, too blonde, and too female to be promoted because the board wouldn't take me seriously. Now, that's a little bit sexist, probably. But he was also probably worried about being made to look bad if I didn't perform in the job and I showed him up. Although I'd been doing the job for free since my manager left. So don't really get that, but anyway. So by doing this, you can remove a lot of the power that these things have to hurt you, and I can stop them having that hold over me personally. Another great phrase that I heard is, and again it echoes some of what the guys have said here tonight, is you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it. And by reframing these things, again, you remove the power that that stuff might have. So I have a final quote for you. It comes from a movie I love, Almost Famous. Any Almost Famous fans in here? Yeah? So it's not this quote. That's a good one. This is a great one. As is that. But the quote is this one: "Be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid." Despite the times that I've taken risks and failed, I actually believe this more than ever now. I'm now doing a job I really enjoy, although it's been really stressful these last 2 weeks, at a company that values the quirks and how I'm made and appreciates the difference in perspective and the value that that can bring to the company. And so I'm really enjoying myself. Even if you can't count on the support that you should be able to take for granted from family, again, we've heard examples of that tonight, there will be people that will be your support network. Kimberly talked about finding your tribe. Find your tribe and they will be there for you. The people in this room will be there for you. And I would want to leave you with this final thought, that it isn't a failure, it's just a lesson that you haven't learned yet. Thank you.